Like zombies searching for brains in a classic horror flick, spring mushroom hunters are seeking out brains of their own. These brains are nothing more than a mushroom that is typically hand-sized and has the appearance of a brain, making this mushroom truly unique in many different ways. Welcome to Morel Truths.
Okay.
So what are morels?
Morel mushrooms. They're probably the most sought after wild mushrooms on the planet. More people hunt them than any other wild mushroom, basically. Yep.
Where do you find morels and when?
Morels come up in the springtime, and they come up in about every state in the United States except for Florida. And they start in the south, like in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and move northward as spring progresses. And they grow in different locations in different parts of the country. Down in the south, they grow in the bottomlands, along creeks, in sandy soil under ash trees. And the Midwest might be dead elm trees. Out in the plain states could be cottonwood trees. So if you go all the way out west, they grow under fir trees and naturally, and then also burn sites. So there's lots of diverse areas that they grow. I found them in Texas under barrel cactus before. So just a lot of different possibilities with morels.
Any particular weather conditions or anything that affect that, soil temperature or anything?
Yes, they start, the mycelium is the plant that's underground, and the mushroom is the fruit itself. And they start growing around 52 degrees when the ground temperature, soil temperature reaches around 52 degrees. That's when they'll start growing. Morels do not pop up; they grow slowly over up to 3 weeks time. And a little gray morel this big will turn into maybe an 8-inch mature yellow after about 3 weeks. And the moisture and temperature can't affect the speed of the growth. Sometimes they'll start growing, then they dry out and don't get rain, and they'll shrivel up and quit growing, or sometimes it'll freeze, damage them a little bit. There's just different factors that come in to play, but that's why sometimes it's a banner spring and sometimes it's not that great of a spring.
Does elevation come into play at all?
No, I've found them as high as 12,000 feet in Idaho before, in October actually, because in situations like that, it snows 30 or 40 feet, and it takes so long for the snow to melt. By the time it melts, it's almost winter again. So October 2nd is the latest I found them, but I've had reports of around 1st of November. So.
Wow. Okay. How do you hunt for morels?
I get into an area that looks, inviting, the right kind of trees and plants, and the right time of the year. And I'll look, not directly under my feet. I'm looking for trees because most morels are mycorrhizal with a certain kind of tree, and so I'm spotting certain kind of trees that in the area that would be favorable, like ash or poplar or whatever it happens to be. And so I'm looking for those trees, and I'll just go from tree to tree. I'll see an ash tree, start heading directly for that tree, and look around that 10, 15, 20 feet away, and then I look for the next tree that's going to be favorable.
Is there any science to morels?
There's a lot of science. Morels are probably one of the most complicated mushrooms, and probably one of the most diverse because they seem to be adaptable. They like limestone outcroppings. There's just a lot of different scenarios that morels will grow, and so it takes a broad amount of possibilities that for hunting conditions or whatever. So and there's science in as far as the right moisture and the right temperature as far as growth and things like that. So
Cool. Okay. Can you grow morels?
Morels are nearly impossible to grow, but there is one person that has a patent on it that has had success, and he's up in Michigan. He grows them indoors, but it's not financially feasible unless it's a big-time operation. So, but it is possible to grow them. There's a lot of people that has tried, and and they can get the mycelium growing, but as far as getting them to fruit, that's the key, that's the secret. And this one guy, that I know has accomplished that.
That's a pretty big feat then.
Yes.
What are the greatest theories to morels?
Define what you mean exactly.
Well, maybe some of the folklore that goes around with them,
Probably one of the biggest ones that's most controversial is that Morels pop up overnight. I'll have a hunter that may have hunted all of his life, and I'll get in a big argument with them because they'll say that they go into the woods at a certain location and they found some right here when they first got into the woods, and they're out there all day and they come back and there's more where they first came in, and there's no way they could, they're a good hunter, they couldn't have missed those. So they think they popped up, but they didn't. It could be a couple that was hiding under a leaf and the wind blew the leaf off, whatever, coming in at different angles. So that's one of them, probably the most folklore, is they do not pop up. I even had a preacher tell me one time he was sitting on the bank of a creek fishing and he saw the ground start to shake and a morel just popped up. And I'm thinking, okay, whatever, I'm not going to argue with you.
How do you preserve morels?
You can dry them. That's the most common way to preserve them. You can dry them in a food dehydrator or just out in the sun, or you can string them up and dry them, air dry them, and then they reconstitute pretty well. Just pour some boiling water back over them and they'll reconstitute. But you can freeze them. If you freeze them, if you like to just fry them up, dip in flour and fry them in butter, you can go ahead and wash them off and halve them, and then go ahead and dip them in your flour and maybe cornmeal mixture, batter them up ready to fry, but then freeze them individually on a cookie sheet. And once they're frozen good and solid on a cookie sheet, then you can put them in like a plastic storage container. And then when you're ready to use them, then have your butter sizzling in a skillet, plop them right in frozen. They're already floured and ready to go, and you can't really tell the difference. If you try to freeze them any other way, or not individually, it just becomes a big mass of mush, and that's really the only proven way. You can also go ahead and just fry them totally ready to eat, and then freeze them that way, and then just put them on a cookie sheet like you do onion rings or something, and that'll work as well. But that's about the only two ways to freeze them, and then drying them is a good method too.
What about canning?
Never canned them. I've heard people that have done that. Some people have pickled them before, but I've not had any experience with it.
Cool. I'm actually going to pause one more. All right. So we talked about preserving, right?
Yep.
Okay. How do you cook morels?
I just got done with my cookbook. Got lots of gourmet recipes in there. Some of them are pretty simple. You can't hardly go wrong with morels if you use cream cheese or Alfredo sauce, cream sauce. Bacon and chives or bacon and ramps is great with morels. But just a simple way is, for frying them up to taste the flavor of morels, is just dip them in a flour and cornmeal mixture, fry them in butter, add a little bit of salt. You can just saute them with butter and garlic and just taste them that way. But other than that, I make a cream of morel soup. I make a Alfredo pasta with Morel Alfredo, and I've got lots of different other things that I do with morels. So basically, you name it, you can do it. I've even made morel cookies before. So,
what's the name of your cookbook?
It's the Mushroom Hunter's Guide to Gourmet Mushroom Cuisine.
And is there a website we can find this at?
Yeah, morelmushroomhunting.com.
Cool. How long have you been hunting morels?
I started hunting when I was around 5 years old, and my neighbors hunted, my parents did, and then I just loved being in the woods, and I got pretty good. By the time I was 12 years old, the neighbor that I used to hunt with got mad because one time he was coming home from work, and I had already gotten home from school, and I had went out and found a bunch of morels. I had 2 or 3 bags full. And he said, I didn't think they'd even be up yet because the dogwoods aren't blooming yet. And I said, well, they're up. And so anyway, at that point, he never even talked to him anymore. So, but anyway, yeah, I've been hunting a long time, and I've had my website since 1999. I've got 1,500 members all over the country, and about 10,000 on an email list, and we have quite a few connections across the country.
And then how many different kinds of morels are there?
There's about 15 to 18 in the United States. There's about 3 species that's a burn site species that come up after a burn in the western states. There's the common black morel, eastern black morel that comes up earliest. It fruits a couple weeks earlier than the other species. Then there's the esculentas. They're gray when they're young, and they turn to golden yellow when they're mature. Then there's another gray yellow species that is called deliciosa, and it is a small slender morel that doesn't get more than maybe 4 inches tall, and it's just a real narrow, thin-walled morel. And there's a few other variances, DNA studies that's been done. Visually you can't really tell the difference, but there are some differences there's like a giant deliciosa that grows in Mississippi that gets as big as esculenta, but it's still the other pit pattern and all that. And there's western natural black morels that's different from the eastern blacks, and those are just some basics.
And then any other advice you can offer?
Morel hunting is, a lot of people just go in the woods and look for morels. They're not really looking for trees, but if you know your trees, you're going to find, if you go out in the woods in the springtime, you can find some morels. But if you actually are looking for specific trees and conditions, your bag is going to be a lot fuller at the end of the day, because the mushrooms are not just. There'll be a sporadic mushroom that's really not associated with the tree. That's just in between this one and that one, but if you want like the mother loads, you got to look for the right kind of trees.
Any special tools that you use, or?
I always slice the morels off, never yank them up. You don't want to damage the mycelium. I slice them off at the base. The stem's good to eat too, so I get as much of the stem as I can get. And then I use a mesh bag when I pick them, either a basket or a mesh bag, because it's just like Johnny Appleseed. There's not been any scientific studies done, but it's just logic will tell you that if you put your morels that you pick in a mesh bag, they breathe and get air, and the spores as you're walking through the woods will drop out and replant the species. So those are really the only tools.
Cool. And then any just last tidbits that you want to add in? We're done?
It's become a very more and more growing popular sport. It's fun. A lot of people enjoy hunting them more than eating them. Some people half and half, and then some people just don't want to brave the elements, and they just rather buy them instead of hunting them. But I enjoy all the aspects. I enjoy hunting. It's exciting. I start hunting in end of February, and I'm not done until almost July, usually, on just morels. When I know that I'm on my last foray or whatever, in the last day of it, even though I've hunted every day for 4 or 5 months, I start getting depressed. So that's just how it is.
True hunter.
It's it's going to be another year before I find morels again. So, but that's how it was last year.
Cool.
So.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.